Hi, folks. Thank you for joining us and spending your lunch hour to learn a little bit more about the Legends and Lore Marker Program from the William G. Pomeroy Foundation. I'm Katy Clune. I think I probably have met many of you on the line, so it's nice to be in your company. I'm state folklorist for Virginia and also director of the Virginia Folklife Program at Virginia Humanities. And I'm gonna to get us started. I'm my mission here is to challenge you to consider adding to Virginia's roster of legends and lore markers because we have just one out of the box, but I know you all have good ideas. And after I present for about 10 minutes, we will hear from Steve Bodner, who heads up marketing for the William G. Pomeroy Foundation, giving us an overview of all their other exciting work. And then I'm very grateful that Emma MacDowell is joining us. She is research historian and engagement associate for the foundation, and she has really been driving the bus as we bring this program to Virginia. And Emma will get into some of the logistics of the Legends and Lore program, which is now accepting applications through April. So thanks for joining us. Feel free to drop in a question at any point. We will save them to the end, but we are here to sort of answer your specific questions. So without hesitation, let's go ahead and dive in. And Steve, next slide. Okay, so I'm guessing that if you are spending your noon hour with us, you could give a better definition of what folklore is than I, but I'm going to quickly run through to get your brain moving in this direction. And then I'm going to attempt to answer the question and inspire, well, what does folklore have to do with cultural tourism? And like I said, challenge you to think about ideas for Virginia, and then end with just a couple words, giving some behind the scenes insight into Virginia's first marker. But let's go ahead and get started. And go ahead and next slide. Next slide. Perfect. What is folklore? I often hear it used in sort of the everyday or in, national news as kind of like, oh, well, that's not true. That's just folklore. And, that is one sense of the term. It is oral tradition or legends that, might be more about sort of storytelling and placemaking than true fact. But really, folklore is a term that, as we see it, covers these synonyms on the left, as well as really being sort of, as Zora Neale Hurston says, the boiled down juice, the pot liquor of human living, the sort of learned at home and on the front porch traditions that really give us meaning. Next slide, please, tend to share the way Mid-Atlantic Arts defines folklore. And in case you're just listening, will read this out. Often defined as the art of everyday life, traditional arts reflect aesthetics, practices, values, and beliefs of community groups, such as families, geographic communities, occupational groups, ethnic heritage groups, faith communities, and more. Traditional arts are often learned orally or by observation and imitation, rather than in institutional or academic settings. All traditions are connected to the history of communities that practice them, but they are not just art forms of the past. They are living traditions that adapt to remain relevant in a changing world. And just to drive this home a little bit more, next slide. So they are passed down through generations. These are two friends of the program, fiddlers out in Southwest Virginia, and Betty Seated interviewed elders in West Virginia to learn the tunes and the bowing styles that she now shares with her community of players of all ages that meet for jams. Next slide. They're also very much community and place-based. Often they can't happen within other geographic contexts, or it could be hard to sort of source the original materials and reasons for being if they're taken out of place and context. This is Brad Hatch of the Potomac Indian tribe working with his two apprentices to weave eel pots. We'll see them again a little bit later. Next slide. And of course, folkways really tap into specific community aesthetics and values. So while we might not recognize this, the specific part of Bolivia and ethnic group that the costumes on the right are from, with the Zapata dancers there in Fairfax, Virginia, because they're part of this amazing Bolivian dance community, know exactly, what sort of subgenre of dance you wear that dress with. Next slide. And lastly, I was just reading a book by Barbara Kingsolver, and she had a great definition of folklorists. Were people who study art made by people who wouldn't call themselves artists. And that's kind of what this slide is getting at. A lot of sort of the master practitioners also have day jobs and wouldn't necessarily see sort of their mastery of a folkway tradition as the way they might introduce themselves in a professional setting. And these are an incredible gospel group who sing sometimes in the tradition of Tidewater Gospel Quartet. Next slide. Okay, so this is how I kind of bring it all home for college students who I often have the pleasure of speaking with. So Taylor Swift, she put out an album called Folklore, and she was definitely trying to tap into this like mountain handmade aesthetic. But when I think of Taylor Swift and the concept of folklore and folk life, my mind doesn't go to that sort of commercially manufactured idea, but rather to all the traditions that Swifties have, that really came out during the Eras tour, like these friendship bracelets. So just food for thought. Next slide. All right, let's keep rolling. So I want to posit that understanding the folkways rooted in the people and places around us are particularly powerful and impactful today to really get you sort of motivated to think about working in your community to pepper the state with these markers. Jenny Odell is one of my favorite authors, and in her book, How to Do Nothing, she really drives home how, in our era, bioregionalism is powerful. And by that, she means the observation and recognition of what grows where, as well as an appreciation for the complex webs of relationships among those actors. Well, I will argue that cultural regionalism is just as important and kind of can be thought of in similar ways. And it can also be thought of as restoring context and connection, and that, when we are scrolling through our feeds all the time and inundated with news, that, as Jenny Odell says, given that all of these issues that face us demand an understanding of complexity, interrelationships, and nuance, the ability to seek and understand context is nothing less than a collective survival skill. So I think there's power in thinking about the particularity of your place, the homegrown traditions, the roots newly planted and adapting or long living, and that people are really hungry for these kinds of stories and a sense of like really grounding down where they are. Next slide. Borne out by data. Here we have a survey in 2024. It's cut off, but it's from McKinsey and Company. And if you look at sort of the respondents replying to the question, what do you think is most important when you're choosing where to travel? All those light blue indicators are experience related. So, right behind kind of cost and quality of hotels, we have things all the way down to authenticity, the ability to experience local customs and culture. Well, that to me sounds a lot like folklore. So this is powerful stuff that, is kind of driving a whole industry around experiential tourism. Of course, we're not going to necessarily do that with these markers, but just to show kind of the hunger out there for the types of experiences and insights we can give. Next slide. And just to use a couple of individuals as examples, Clyde Jenkins is someone the Folklife program has worked with quite a lot. He is a master basket weaver, often making pieces out of white oaks he harvests on his own land. And he also grows heritage apple trees. Next slide. And he can tell you, about he has up to 300 varieties that were all sort of regional mid-Atlantic old American apple varieties. And um, next slide, who else grows heritage apples? Well, the incredible cideries like Albemarle Cider Works here in Central Virginia. And through sort of initiatives like the Virginia Cider Map and kind of creating an activity and giving some cultural context to the cider tradition in Virginia, they're driving visitors to sample the ciders. Next slide. Similarly, I know a lot of you are well familiar with Virginia's Crooked Road, otherwise known as Highway 58 out in Southwest Virginia. I would also drive it to Norfolk when I was in the early days of seeing my husband and think about, wow, what a way this highway changes across the state. Well, you know, we can think of the Crooked Road and the Creeper Trail as sort of cultural and natural assets, sort of two examples that, of course, are also intertwined because they're all pulling. That's kind of the appeal of visitors seeking recreation and cultural opportunities in the mountains. But when I read this quote from Allison Mays, who's involved in a new Virginia Tech study that defined the annual economic impact of the Virginia Creeper Trail to be roughly $61 million annually. She said, as someone who grew up in Damascus, I've seen firsthand how deeply the Creeper Trail is woven into the identity and livelihood of this region. It's not just a recreation asset, it's the backbone of many small businesses and a source of pride for our communities. Next slide. Well, that made me think of Ellen Elms, who paints these incredible community murals in Appalachian, Virginia, such as this work called Echoes on Clintwood's Jetty Baker Theater there on Main Street. And she finds regional folk life through interviewing community members who come back to her with sort of things that symbolize their particular heritage. And at the rededication ceremony, I was so moved to hear Council Member Jim Childress say, who I am is right up there in this mural. That is my history. And I think there's an opportunity to instill similar kind of pride with using these markers. Next slide. Okay, so, I don't, it sounds sort of icky to use the word assets, but if you flip it around and think about sort of defining this as your power and particularity, what are your cultural powers that you might be able to make a little bit more visible through one of these markers? Next slide. And just a couple more ideas to get your uh, thinking caps buzzing. Back to Brad Hatch, member of the Potomac Indian tribe. I would love to see a legend and lore marker for eel pots. Eel pots are these woven traps that these people caught eels with when they returned to their lands post Civil War and farming wasn't good, and they would upturn those eels to crab into crab bait and make their local economy sort of fishing and trapping using these vessels. And next slide. Brad says about eel pots, there are objects that say a whole lot more about a group of people than any historic document ever could. Eel pots are one of those things. They have a real story to tell about our people, about where we've been and where we are going. Eel pot legends and lore marker for Virginia. One possibility. Next slide. Similarly, Corey Harris, amazing blues musician and scholar that lives here in Charlottesville, where I'm based, who apprenticed Lamont Jack Purley in the Piedmont style blues. He similarly sort of gets me thinking. Next slide. Okay, he got me thinking, Virginia music has deep roots of our hundreds of historic markers in one of the oldest states of this whole nation. How many markers have to do with music? I think I searched the word song and 15 came up, but surely there's many more. If you think of the whole ecosystem of music, the jams, the luthiers, the schools keeping these traditions flourishing, there's so many more. Um, so I think we can do better than that, Virginia. Next slide. I and Corey also sort of puts a call out when he speaks to and when he told me that when he travels he'll ask people, so what was the local music like around here, and often people don't have an answer because they just haven't explored it. And he says, as the world progresses, we are losing a lot of these cultures, a lot of these ways, a lot of this knowledge from all over the world. I hope that people can see value in themselves because that's what I'm trying to do. I see value in myself and bring it out and share it with you. I want to see that from other people. Um, and I think you can also consider the whole process of conceiving a marker idea, getting it ready for application, hopefully being approved, planning a celebration for your community as kind of a powerful tool to bring people together and also educate others about this particular story. And I'm going to share, and then this is my last couple slides, but I'd like to read a story from Emma Ito, who's our director of education at Virginia Humanities, about one of the most moving marker celebration ceremonies she witnessed just by way of inspiration. So Emma writes, about a year ago, I had the honor of attending a celebration for a historic resource marker in Cumberland, Virginia, for the African American community of Lucyville. It was not only a beautiful recognition of community with friends and descendants coming from all over the nation, but this was a project that was all heart and submitted by an incredible middle school class and teacher, Lou Longnecker. Students ran the program that day where they welcomed nationally recognized speakers and premiered a film that they wrote, filmed, and narrated about Lucyville. It was an incredible day where it was clear that to all the people there, this was important, living history deserving remembrance. I'll never forget it. Uh, so you can really do a lot if you think sort of expansively about what a marker could deliver to your community. Next slide. And just briefly, I go ahead and next slide. I had the chance to take a deep dive into one of our longtime partners here at Virginia Folklife, the Reedville Fishermen's Museum in Virginia's Northern Neck region. We've been working with them since our founding, essentially, in 1989. And the museum itself has done a lot of um, documentation, preservation, and also promotion of the particular tradition of shanty singing on the Chesapeake Bay, which was directly tied to the local industry of menhaden fishing, where you can see crews of Black fishermen pulled these purse boat nets filled with thousands and thousands of menhaden. And in order to make sure that their power moved in sync, they would sing work songs. And I had a chance to, next slide. And when I started this role in November 22, meet Lloyd Hill, who was part of sort of the revival of some of these retired um, menhaden crews, sharing these shanties for public audiences. And Lloyd, got real with me and said, well, this tradition is not really living anymore because there's barely any Black watermen in Lancaster County. But it's so valuable to be able to say, to teach people who might be casually visiting, this is part, yes, there were Black labor songs on the Chesapeake Bay, and Virginia does indeed have a shanty singing tradition. Um, and so I invited the museum as a first applicant, but I can't wait to see sort of what other uh, applications come in this year, and at this point, I'm going to hand it off to Steve to tell us more about the foundation's work overall, and then we'll take your questions at the end. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you so much for that thoughtful introduction and all of the wonderful examples and everything that's happening with folk life and folklore in Virginia. As Katie said at the beginning of the presentation, my name is Steve Bodner. I head up marketing and communications for the William G. Pomeroy Foundation. And before we dive in, I just want to commend all of you for your ongoing interest in folklore and folk life. And we're really grateful for the opportunity to spend some time with you for this webinar and think about opportunities for markers that might enhance the ways in which you work and support and bring attention to your communities. All of us at the Pomeroy Foundation, including our founder and trustee Bill Pomeroy, who's pictured on this slide, are enthusiastic about the opportunities that we might create together in Virginia. Every Pomeroy marker, and I like to begin this way, tells a story. They help celebrate and preserve and share heritage in visible and lasting ways. So, as we get started with today's presentation, I also want to turn it over to my colleague Emma for an introduction, and she'll be sharing some information specifically about the Legends and Lore program.
Yeah. Hi everyone. As Katie mentioned, I'm a research historian and engagement associate at the Pomeroy Foundation, and I'm also the foundation's Legends and Lore liaison. So I'm so excited to be here today and tell you a bit more about our programs.
Thank you, Emma. Um, So, for those of you who are new to us, the William G. Pomeroy Foundation, we're a private philanthropic organization based in Syracuse, New York, and we're founded by philanthropist and entrepreneur Bill Pomeroy. And the mission of the foundation brings together his two greatest passions in life. One is improving outcomes for blood cancer patients and helping communities celebrate their local history and cultural heritage by fully funding roadside markers. Now, Bill established the Pomeroy Foundation 20 years ago while he was battling acute myeloid leukemia, AML, and his vision was about improving the probability for others facing a similar situation with supporting life-saving treatments and research. And I also want to point out that at the same time, Bill is a lifelong history enthusiast. And so that belief in history is at the heart of our marker grant programs. And people often ask us, well, why roadside markers? And that really is a story that goes back to when Bill was growing up, and he has fond memories of traveling with his dad, who was a salesman, and they would stop and read roadside markers together. And those moments visiting a marker or historic site and learning about local history really made a lasting impression on Bill. So when Bill found out that in New York State, where we're based, that the state had stopped funding its marker program in the 1930s, local communities had to do the fundraising on their own for all those decades. And so Bill, as an entrepreneur and philanthropist, saw an opportunity to fill that gap. And that is what launched our first marker grant program and a number of our signature and partner marker programs, including Legends and Lore. So that brings us to, why historical markers are so important to communities. So roadside markers really benefit communities in several key ways. They tell stories, they honor legacies, and they strengthen the fabric of communities. They educate the public, encourage pride of place, encourage tourism. They highlight untold stories and bring forward voices that may have been overlooked. And markers spark curiosity and interest while ensuring that these stories are preserved for future generations. When a marker is installed, communities often host dedication ceremonies. And right here in Syracuse, where we're based, we have a really exciting Legends and Lore marker dedication happening this week on St. Patrick's Day, or I should say next week on St. Patrick's Day. We're anticipating more than 200 people. It's for a really special story about the only traffic light in the United States that has green on top. So I encourage you to go and check that out and look into that a little more. But that's a great example of the power of a marker dedication. And uh, one of the other things I wanted to point out about the really the gold standard of Pomeroy markers is that the verification of the sources is critically important for every single marker. So every single Legends and Lore marker that you see is reviewed by a professional folklorist like Katy, as well as professional historians on the Pomeroy marker team. And that way we can really ensure that the inscriptions are tried and true and can last and endure for generations. And one other important point to think about is that, excuse me, all of these markers are fully funded by the Pomeroy Foundation. That means that the grant covers the entire cost of the marker, the pole, and the shipping to the grant recipient. So that really takes the burden of costs, again, off of the local community and grant recipient. One other exciting initiative I want to mention as a benefit of historical markers in general is our National Historic Marker Weekend, which is coming up at the end of April. And it's an all volunteer service event that encourages groups of all sizes to go out in their communities and take care of local markers as a cleanup project. And so after a long winter or time over years of no care or maintenance, going out there and cleaning them up really helps to make them last even longer. So, National Historic Marker Weekend is on April 24th through the 26th. You could register as a volunteer online. We've had many groups and teams and individuals from Virginia volunteer over the years. So, you could use the QR code, check out our website, wgpfoundation.org. Again, it's an all volunteer event and a great way to really think about why historical markers and roadside markers of all types are important to our communities and why taking care of them is really important. So now, without further ado, I'm really delighted to turn it over to my colleague Emma to tell you more about our grant programs and legends and lore.
All right, thank you, Steve. And to begin this section, I just want to give a brief overview of some of our different categories of markers that we have. So our marker grant programs fall into two categories, signature programs and partnership programs. Together, this range of regional and national grant programs provide the opportunity to communities to commemorate a wide range of history. From early transportation corridors to folklore, foodways, and nationally significant events, many of which naturally align with villages, towns, and cities nationwide. So let's start with our six signature marker grant programs here. New York State Historic Transportation, National Register, Legends and Lore, Hungry for History, and Hometown Heritage. And each of these programs have their own page on our website where you'll find detailed criteria, guidelines, and application instructions. Next slide, please. Yep. And here are some examples of existing signature markers, some in Virginia and some elsewhere. So just give you a visual. Next slide. And another opportunity we offer is our Pomeroy Education Program. So students conduct primary source research and prepare applications and can see their work realized as a permanent marker in their community. The program offers flexible resources aligned with academic timelines for both high school and higher education students. What sets the program apart is that student applications for our signature programs are accepted on a rolling basis, and student-led is not limited to just classes. Students have actually applied through libraries, scout troops, student governments, clubs, and other extracurricular groups. Next, please. Yep. In addition to our signature programs, we partner with nonprofit organizations and governments to commemorate historic people, places, and events that align with our historic preservation and educational mission. These partnerships allow us to fund markers across broader networks such as History Colorado, North Carolina African American Heritage Commission, or the National Collaborative for Women's History Sites. Yep, and here are some examples of markers we've sponsored through these partnerships. Just give you another visual there. And then now let me give an overview of the program we're focusing on today, Legends and Lore. Here it is. So our Legends and Lore program commemorates the rich folklore, traditions, and storytelling that shape a community's identity. Our marker grants are fully funded and cover the entire cost of the marker, pole, and shipping. To be eligible for these grants, applicants must be a 501(c)(3) organization, a nonprofit academic institution, or a local, state, or federal government entity. Our Legends and Lore markers are characterized by their red and beige color scheme with a sun and moon icon at the top. Our markers are 3 by 2 feet cast aluminum with a 7-foot aluminum pole. Our goal is to offer Legends and Lore in all 50 states and Washington, D.C. And right now, Legends and Lore markers are available in 15 states, including Virginia. In each state, we've partnered with a folklore-related nonprofit that promotes the program and reviews applications. We don't have a folklorist on staff, so these partnerships are essential. Our official partner for Virginia Legends and Lore applications is the Virginia Folklife Program, as we've mentioned, and we are grateful to Katy for her leadership and support with this. If you know of a qualified folklore organization in a state not yet participating, please contact us. We're always looking to expand. Now, let's review some of the subject matter guidelines for our Legends and Lore markers. Successful marker applications fall within the categories of folktales, legends, and folk life. Folktales are fictional stories passed down about people or events not proven to have existed. Stories passed down that are popularly regarded as historical, although not verifiable, are known as legends. And folk life is characterized as traditions such as music, skills, crafts, and events passed along within a community. They often involve real people that can be verified with primary sources. But not every subject is a fit for this program. Applications that focus on historical events without a folklore aspect are typically not successful, and similarly, well-known or legendary individuals don't qualify unless their story includes a meaningful folklore component. Purely literary creations or personal family stories that haven't extended to the broader community tradition also fall outside the scope. The key is that the story must be part of the shared community memory or tradition that's passed down over time. All right, now let's take a look at some of our existing Legends and Lore markers. And as hinted at before, here's a photo of our brand new marker for the Shanty Singers. This is the first ever Virginia Legends and Lore marker. And let me just tell you a little bit more about this unique generational custom, feeding off of what Katy mentioned. The Northern Neck region of Virginia, a peninsula bounded by the Potomac River and the Rappahannock River, have been home to the menhaden fishing industry ever since the end of the Civil War. Reedville, Virginia was particularly involved in the menhaden processing industry. Menhaden is a type of bony, oily fish that is used for products like animal feed, paint, and fertilizer. These fish travel in large schools, and the only efficient method of catching them was by net. Crews of predominantly African American fishermen departed in long purse seine boats, as Katy showed in her slides, and performed the backbreaking task of hauling in thousands of pounds of menhaden by hand. The fishermen sang traditional work songs or shanties to foster camaraderie and synchronize the task of pulling in the net. During the mid-20th century, mechanization revolutionized the fishing industry. The practice of netting by hand became obsolete in the wake of hydraulic power blocks, and the shanties ceased. That is until 1991, when William Hudnall organized the Northern Neck Shanty Singers. This is a group of retired menhaden fishermen, and they sang at Reedville Fishermen's Museum. This group preserved the Black cultural tradition by performing the same sea shanties that they sang on the water decades prior. The group performed around the country for several decades. And the folklore element of this application is not the existence of the fishermen and their work songs, as those are historical facts, but it is the folk life aspect that the community retained its connection to shanty singing and how it continues to support this meaningful cultural tradition. And this marker, as with just about the Shanty Singers marker, this marker was only recently manufactured, so please watch out for its installation soon. And then the next one. So this one is for the Bear Lake Monster, and it is located in Garden City, Utah. In the Bear Lake Valley, a legend has persisted that recalls stories of a sightings of a monster lurking in Bear Lake. The tale of the Bear Lake Monster grew after Joseph C. Rich, a Mormon church leader, reported secondhand accounts of sightings of a snake-like creature in the lake in 1868. Rich admitted that his claim was a phony marketing ploy, but the legend of the Bear Lake Monster has continued to be retold ever since. With sporadic sightings of the monster continuing to the present, the story serves for community members as a sort of cautionary water tale, as well as a fondly recalled local anecdote. This fictional story is a good example of a folktale or a frequently told fictional story about people or events not proven to have existed. And one of our most popular legends and lore markers, Betsy's Bride, is a prime example of a legend. The tale takes place during the American Revolution in late 1775, when British troops began to close in on North Carolina. On December 8th, on the Currituck Banks, just across the border from Virginia, the Doughty family received information that the British were marching down the coast. Word needed to reach General William Skinner, commander of the nearest North Carolina militia, but he was at home in Hertford, over 40 miles away. And 16-year-old Betsy Doughty overheard the news and decided to act. Without telling her family, Betsy snuck out of the house, mounted her Spanish Mustang, Black Bess, and galloped into the cold, rainy night across the North Carolina countryside to reach General Skinner's home in Hertford and relay the urgent news of the British advance. The militia subsequently defeated the British, and Betsy was thanked by George Washington himself, they say, for her commitment to American freedom. Although this story seems real, it cannot be officially verified, therefore it's a legend. Famously described as the haunting antagonist in author Washington Irving's The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, the Headless Horseman has captured imaginations for generations. The Legend of Sleepy Hollow embarks on the tale of Ichabod Crane, a skittish schoolteacher who tries to woo a wealthy landowner's daughter, Katrina Van Tassel. Crane's plans are spoiled by the raucous and brawny Brown Bones. In the story, Bones poses as the Headless Horseman in a devious plot to scare away Ichabod Crane. The Headless Horseman, sometimes known as the Galloping Hessian, is portrayed with a pumpkin, often a jack-o'-lantern, while riding a black horse. The story goes that the Headless Horseman is the ghost of a Hessian soldier who was decapitated by cannon fire during the Revolutionary War. And while this frightening figure continues to live on in the pages of the Legend of Sleepy Hollow, local lore claims that the Headless Horseman is buried in Sleepy Hollow Cemetery in Sleepy Hollow, New York. The legend says that the ghost tethers his horse to graves in the churchyard only to set out at night in search of his missing head. While myths about Headless Horsemen can be traced to the Middle Ages, the infamous Headless Horseman from the Legend of Sleepy Hollow has become an infamous American folktale. And also, please check out our online marker map for more information on these markers and others. Every funded marker has its own webpage with location details, historical text, and often photos or videos. You can also search by word using terms like building or architecture to narrow the results. And we strongly encourage applicants to look at this webpage for inspiration on their Legends and Lore marker applications. And when applying for a Pomeroy Marker Grant, you'll want to think about these three key steps. First, you need to review the program guidelines and criteria very closely. Second, you'll want to confirm eligibility. As I mentioned previously, our grants are open to 501c3 organizations, nonprofit academic institutions, tribal nations, and government entities. Find one of these groups to partner with if you're an individual. Third, you'll need to begin gathering accepted sources in your land permission letter very early. Successful applicants include supporting documents in their application, which demonstrate that their proposed inscription is a valid example of a legend or folklore according to the criteria as stated on their website. Supporting documentation includes academically accepted stories, credible websites, local history publications, websites, newspaper articles, oral histories or interviews, and other materials. Please visit our website for complete guidelines and grant round deadlines. Also, your application will be reviewed by the Foundation's folklore consultant and your state partner. And here in Virginia, that's the Virginia Folklife Program. They may contact you with questions or suggestions to strengthen your submission. After review, applications are then presented to the Foundation's trustees for final approval. And we have two application rounds per year. The first grant round of 2026 is now open, and the application is due on April 27th. The next grant round opens this August, and you're invited to apply for up to 5 markers per round. Right, last slide. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out by phone or email. We're happy to support you through the process from brainstorming ideas to finalizing your inscription. So yeah, let's open up for your questions now. We love to hear what stories you're thinking about with sharing with your community.
Thank you. Thank you, Emma. Um, Looking here to pull up some questions. Let's see. There we go. We've got a first question. How long does the process take? Emma, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, that's a good question. So depends on what phase of the process, but basically, once you submit your application, it takes about an upwards of 3 months at the longest for us to be able to evaluate and bring it to the trustees and get it all ready for them. And then the production process takes about 12 to 16 weeks, so they can handcraft your custom marker. So I think that answers that.
Great. And as we wait for a few more questions here, I have a overall follow-up question to this, and maybe Emma, you could answer this. What do you recommend in terms of preparation? Let's say if someone isn't able to apply this grant round in the fall, when the next grant round opens, how should they prepare for that? How far in advance? Anything with the land permission letters?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, we can't stress enough that it's really important to start collecting accepted sources to support the inscription and get your land permission letter extra early. I know when you're trying to put markers on public property, especially, it can take longer to secure permission for that. So you just want to make sure they have enough notice in time for the grant round opening and that you can collect those sources in time. So yeah, several months in advance if you can. That's probably the ideal, but yeah, just give yourself plenty of time. Any other questions?
I saw
Another question.
Elizabeth raise her
Oh,
hand, but we're
go
Yeah.
taking,
ahead,
there we
Katie.
go. Awesome.
Elizabeth says, does the grant cover installation costs? Um, so the installation is up to the local folks who have applied for the marker and coordinating that. What we have seen is volunteers from a local public works department or some other folks that can, kind of come together and help with the installation. We have funded over 3,000 roadside markers throughout the United States. And all of those instances, they've always been able to find some local volunteers to coordinate that effort. We also have a follow-up question. Do you have to include the land permission letter with the application? Emma?
Yes. Short answer, yes, you are required as one of the elements of the application to submit the land permission letter in this case. Yep. Good one.
And I have a question. What if you want to put the marker on state-owned land? What is one to do?
Yeah, you you would have to inquire with the state entity, like whoever owns that, and maybe like look up who owns it, like on real property if you're unsure. But yeah, they can probably refer you to the right person, and yeah, ensure that you're able to get to the right place. Yeah.
And I'll add to that that there's been many instances of state um,
Mhm.
property that the markers have been installed on throughout the United States. And, oftentimes it might be in a state park. So just
Mhm.
to add to, what Emma is saying, connect with the local municipality or local state related agency that can kind of point you to helping to facilitate that.
Absolutely.
And I remember communicating with the marker coordinator at Virginia's Department of Historic Resources, and they were excited that this program was coming to the state
Yeah.
and, are receptive to working together as needed.
Excellent.
We have some time left for a few more questions. If you have questions, feel free to put them into the Q&A. I will also point out that our email address and phone number are on this slide. So if you think of, a question after the fact, and our contact information is on our website as well. So if you have a question after the fact, please reach out to us. We're happy to answer any and all questions. We will also send out a follow-up email with the recording, and the recording for this webinar will be shared with folks who have registered and beyond so that they can get this information out and see this. The grant round is open right now, so what better time to apply and get ready for Legends and Lore Markers this spring. Katy or Emma, as we're waiting for any other questions, do you have any other thoughts or comments that you wanted to share that, or you've come to mind as kind of reminders as we wrap things up today?
Um, Not much. I was just gonna say, like, if you have any specific ideas or stories you'd like to run by us, like, I'd be happy to correspond with you over email or over the phone, like whatever you're comfortable with. So yeah, just yeah, reach out if you'd like. We're very happy to hear your ideas and yeah, help you flesh them out.
And I'm just hopeful that some of you on the call think about sharing this opportunity or putting in an application yourselves because Virginia has so much folk life out there and we got to do better than just one marker. Thanks so much, Emma and Steve.
Thank you, Katy.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you,
you.
everyone, for joining us today. We appreciate your time and look forward to your ideas and applications, and have a great rest of your day.
Bye, everyone.